Now, Republicans haven't given up the fight on same-sex marriage. In fact, just this Sunday, Marco Rubio was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and he had this to say.
I think it's bad law, and for the following reason. If you want to change the definition of marriage, then you need to go to state legislatures and get them to change it. Because states have always defined marriage, and that's why some people get married in Las Vegas by an Elvis impersonator, and in Florida you got to wait a couple days when you get your permit. Every state has different marriage laws, but I do not believe that the court system was the right way to do it, because I don't believe...
But it's done now. Are you going to work to overturn it?
Well, you can't work to overturn it.
Sure, you can do a constitutional amendment.
Well, as I've said, I don't believe that. That would be conceding that the current Constitution is somehow wrong and needs to be fixed. I don't think the current Constitution gives the federal government the power to regulate marriage. That belongs at the state and local level. And that's why if you want to change the definition of marriage, which is what this argument is about, it's not about discrimination. It is about the definition of a very specific, traditional, and age-old institution. That definitional change, if you want to change it, you have a right to petition your state legislature and your elected representatives to do it. What is wrong is that the Supreme Court has found this hidden constitutional right that 200 years of jurisprudence had not and basically overturned the will of voters in Florida, where over 60% passed a constitutional amendment that defined marriage in the state constitution as the union of one man and one woman.
So are you accepting the idea of same-sex marriage in perpetuity?
Well, it is current law. I don't believe any case law is settled law. Any future Supreme Court can change it. And ultimately, I will appoint Supreme Court justices that will interpret the Constitution as originally constructed.
This guy actually thinks that the ruling on same-sex marriage gives people a right that they didn't have before. No. They're giving people a right that they should have had the entire fucking time under the Constitution. And he says, well, I don't want to do a constitutional amendment because that would be admitting the Constitution is wrong. No, well, at that point, I agree with, because the Constitution was right, and it's very clear in the 14th Amendment that everyone needs to be treated equally under the fucking law. This is what Marco Rubio and these other GOP bigots don't understand. You're supposed to treat everyone equally under the law. That includes marriage. But they're trying to regulate marriage. Well, isn't the fact that polygamy is illegal a regulation on marriage? I'm just asking. And besides, this isn't a regulation. The ban on same-sex marriage, which is actual policy that they passed. Actual policy. All right, don't ask, don't tell them the different statewide same-sex marriage bans. We had one in Michigan that said, well, marriage is between one man and one woman, right? That was considered unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. You passed an extra law to deny someone a right that the Constitution should have already afforded you. They use this, you realize they use these arguments, these same exact arguments, to go against interracial marriage. And this is what it's turned into. These same arguments continue to be used against people who love each other, who just want to get married. And that's it. They want to be treated equally under the law. Before, back in the 1960s, it was interracial marriage. And some of these arguments were based on religious belief. I mean, there was a quote, God is the original segregationist. And this was back during the interracial marriage fight. And once again, they're using the same, well, God's against, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. God's against gay marriage. God was also against interracial marriage. They're using that religious argument over and over again. Now, Marco Rubio didn't quite say that, but we know where he stands. This is the basis for his belief. Now, I want to give you a quote here from a case, Scott v. Sanford. This is an interracial case. In 1857, Chief Justice Taney had said, intermarriages between white persons and Negroes or mulattoes were regarded as unnatural and immoral. Now, fast forward that to the same-sex marriage discussion. You hear the exact same argument. Same-sex marriage is unnatural and immoral. They also said that you couldn't have viable offspring for interracial marriage. And they use the same argument against same-sex marriage. It's the same argument being used over and over again to deny people rights. Now, Rubio and the other GOP bigots that I had mentioned, they will almost undoubtedly appoint people who are against same-sex marriage and ultimately against freedom. Because this is what it is. This is an issue of freedom. This is an issue of liberty, of being able to love who you want to love, as long as there is consent involved. And a lot of these people run off to the slippery slope and say, well, next you're going to have dog marriage, and next you're going to have child marriage. No. See, that's not where we're going. That's not where we want to go. In those two situations, there is no consent. It's a ridiculous argument, and it's a ridiculous slippery slope. But you know that's where they're going to go next. And it's one of the arguments that they use against same-sex marriage, and one of the same arguments they used against interracial marriage. These are the parallels that are going on. We're having the same fight today over same-sex marriage that we had over interracial marriage. It's the same argument, the same thing. And they're on the same side of history. The people who are against it are on the wrong side. Just as they were back then, now they're still on the wrong side. It's about freedom. And they don't understand that because they don't believe in freedom.